Welcome to another edition of Throwing Down Some Heavy Light. My name is Aljamal Binding. I'm the chair of the board of Movement in Omaha for Race Equity. And we have a series of programs we have from time to time to talk about issues in our community, dealing with social justice issues, race issues, anti-racism, and also helping us to learn about other programs and organizations that are in our community to help improve the quality of life. Today we have a special guest, Ms. Judith Hill, who is executive of North Omaha Collective. This organization deals with healing center engagement in North Omaha. Judith has worked in previous programs in the community dealing with youth and gang intervention. I came to know Judith many years ago when she first started the Charles U Health Center. And she was a guest speaker also in some of my classes I had at Nebraska Methodist College talking about health issues and some of the things that low-income families face in our community, particularly African Americans who are dealing with the healthcare industry and so on. Also, Judith is very much involved in issues in terms of the community dealing with how you can help people do issues related to writing grants and so on. I actually served on the board of directors where Judith was one of the staff members, and she wrote a grant that got us $4 to $5 million from the federal government. I think we were like one of 21 or something throughout the country. And we also had Senator Hagel come out and visit, so that helped a little bit too. But Judith had great grant writing ability to help Charles U to get the special program and so on. So, Judith, I want to start off by saying, welcome to Throwing Down Some Heavy Light. And can we first start off by you sharing a little bit more about yourself to the viewing audience, participants?
Thank you so much, Ajamal, for having me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the work that you're doing through MORE, and it's just an honor to be here with you this afternoon. As you said, we've had a chance to work together for quite some time over the years, and so it is good for our work to bring us back full circle. Judith Hill, oh, you know what? I always get uncomfortable when you say, "Tell me about you." Well, I am a native of Omaha, Nebraska, educated in Omaha, Nebraska, the educational system. Attended Union College, alumni of Union College and UNO. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am a servant leader, and I'm trying to learn to move out of that capacity, Ajamal, from a servant leader into being a leader of a nonprofit organization. What do you mean when you say servant leader, Judith? I've spent probably almost 40 years working in North Omaha organizations. This is home for me. I've always had the opportunity to work behind and support some of Omaha's greatest, what I consider to be community leaders, whether it's in grant writing, program development, whether it's in fund development. That's been the role that I've always had. My job has always been to make the individual that leads the organization look good and to make sure that the work that we put out in the community is representative of the services that we desire to provide. And so it was about a year ago that I chose to accept an invitation to serve as the executive director. And man, I had to come from behind somebody, and I had to stand out on both feet in front of the community. And so I'm excited about the opportunity that I have to really educate the community more around what is healing-centered engagement.
Good, good. Now, we face various challenges, including outsiders and racial issues, as well as outsiders healing concern. I know there's been a number of groups who've come in and done some workshops and so on over the years. What is unique about your program?
Healing centered engagement. Well, first of all, if I could just give you a little bit of background, it's been about 3 years ago that Dr. Sean Jenwright, African American professor, he now is the professor at Harvard University. He teaches healing centered engagement to graduate students. He came to Omaha with his organization, Flourish Agenda, and they were presenting to our community this concept of healing centered engagement. It was a training program that was created to engage actually high risk, at risk youth of color. And so as I sat and I listened to Dr. Jen Wright talk, immediately I recognized that while this is wonderful information to share with youth, if the individuals that are presenting this information to our youth are not themselves healed, they are doing a disservice to our community. So I knew from the onset that healing centered engagement was a thought process that had to be presented to individuals that are responsible for making change in our community. The first thing that healing centered engagement, the way I introduce it is this. Imagine, Jamal, if every conversation that you had, no matter where you were, whether it was in a business setting or boardroom, whether it was personal among your family, whatever setting you were in, imagine if when you walked away from that encounter, you felt that you were heard, You felt that you were understood. It doesn't mean you were agreed with, but you felt that when you walked away from that individual or from that meeting or out of that boardroom, that there was a sense of well-being and that the interaction that occurred between you and those individuals were healthy. And there was a path that was created for you to continue to build on those conversations. That's how I talk about healing centered engagement. It is a training process that teaches us how to engage with each other in such a way that we promote healing and that we promote well being. We teach, if you don't mind, just a couple more. We teach 5 strategies and we teach and we anchor it with 4 skills. The strategies that we teach: learn to embrace the importance of culture. Learn to recognize the importance of having agency in your life. Understand how relationships contribute to the success of any relationship that you are involved in. Do you know your meaning? People oftentimes say their meaning is where they work. What is meaning? What is your why? And then finally, what are your aspirations? Those are the 5 strategies that we teach. We say that if you want to be good at it, embrace these 4 skills: lens to mirror, transactional to transformative, problem to possibility, and hustle to flow. As we talk for the rest of this evening, I'll have the opportunity to be able to share with you a little bit more in depth what each of those strategies and those 4 skills mean.
Good. Judith, one of the aspects that we face in our community is data, accountability, and transparency, which is part of our mission also in social service for people of color and low-income people. How do you measure the effectiveness of North Omaha Collective Incorporated?
Right now, well, first of all, as a grant writer that has had the privilege and the honor of writing grants for North Omaha-based organizations for over 30 years, I understand the importance of data. I had a young lady who was a doctor at UNMC many years ago, Magda Peck. Dr. Magda Peck said, data tells a story. Prior to then, I hated data. It meant collecting numbers and sending people reports. But when she said data tells a story, I understood what she meant. That if you want people to embrace what you're doing, you have to tell them your story. And your story lies in the data that you collect. Now, understand that North Omaha Collective is a brand new organization. We just started doing training a little over a year ago. And so right now, the data, nobody's asking me a funder for data. So the data that I'm collecting right now is: who are we training? What are the ages? What are the race? What type of responses are we getting back in terms of how people are embracing the knowledge that we are imparting during our trainings? I have, as we are continuing to grow, understand, we just got here Thursday. We just put our walking shoes on about a month ago, that I have planned a meeting probably in the next month with a young lady that I'm going to work with that is going to help us to develop our evaluation tool. Now, again, as a new organization, nobody's asking you to do that, but I understand that as a nonprofit organization in North Omaha, serving individuals in this community, I have to be able to tell the story. And so we are in the process of developing a comprehensive evaluation process by which we will be able to then further evaluate the success of the training that we're providing.
You know, as you mentioned that, one of the concerns we have is people oftentimes don't want to share the data. And again, excuse me, if you provide these services, you'll be able to tell who you serve, what area,
Right.
zip codes, and so on. Another question comes to mind is, what is your relationship to the Omaha Plantation Schools? That's the word I use. Secondary schools institution and schools to prison pipeline. In other words, you deal with issues in the community, but what about these other bigger institutions? What's your relationship to them?
Again, part of the work that we do, and I understood this, and it was very different from what was being promoted by the organization. Oh, and also, let me stop and say this, that North Omaha Collective is the only organization in the United States that does healing-centered engagement training full time. I am so proud of that. This was an initiative brought to us by an African-American gentleman, created by him, and we are the only organization in this country that is promoting and teaching healing-centered engagement full-time. Now, back to your question regarding OPS. We train individuals, nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations, parents, youth, And we also are looking at what we call institutions, our medical facilities, OPS. We've already sat down with OPS and we're saying to them again, you probably spend more time with our children than anybody else. We need you to understand how important it is to understand how to engage effectively with our children, how to understand the uniqueness and the opportunity that you have to be able to educate them. But first, you must understand, first of all, a little bit about yourself. Do some self-reflection. What are your biases? What are the things that lens to mirror that I mentioned? What are those things that walk into the classroom with you every single day that impact how effectively you engage our young people? You cannot tell me that I should entrust you with my children if I am not certain that you've done the hard work to be able to make certain that when you walk in that room every day, that you bring the very best of who you are and you impart that to our children. So yes, long answer. We are working with OPS and looking at how we can work with parents, but more importantly, how do we work with the staff and the individuals that are responsible for making decisions, that are responsible for educating our children on a daily basis.
Judith, recently we had the murder by the sheriff office of an African American youth. I understand the person was from Africa and so on, and been here for a number of years. Last year there were a number of two African Americans who were murdered by law enforcement. We had some other killings in our city recently, and we know about that in terms of people of color, African Americans killing each other, Latinos killing each other, and so on. Can a program like yours address those tragedies?
Yes, I believe that it can, and that is our long-term goal in terms of how we engage the community. How can we do that? By getting people to embrace the concepts and the processes that we are teaching. So, for example, when we talk about these tragedies, how do they occur? When we talk about the police department, when we talk about those that law enforcement, those agencies that we have given permission, they are, as our former councilman Ben Gray told me several years ago, they are a paramilitary force that as a community we have given the power to provide care and to look out for our well-being and our safety. That is what their responsibility is. So in order for them to do a good job, an excellent job, a job that allows them to be able to give us the dignity and the honor and the respect and the safety that we're looking for, they themselves must first do some hard work. First of all, how as you begin to approach this community, as you police us, do the officers, I know some do, but are you promoting the importance of your officers understanding the culture of the individuals that they are working with? Remember, I said one of the strategies are culture. Culture isn't just white and black. Culture isn't just race. Culture is, do you understand that uniquely each one of us has a different culture? You and I have a different culture. Why? Because we were raised in different backgrounds. Okay, so as we talk about working with our police department, they have to understand the importance of understanding the community that they work with. They have to understand that each and every one of us, every black person isn't the same. Every young person that you run into isn't the same. They are going to move, they're going to act, they're going to respond based upon their individual way that they believe in, the way that they see life. And so we have an opportunity as North Omaha Collective to provide the training that is necessary. And the police department, there are those that have expressed interest in how do you go about on recognizing, first of all, what are your biases? Ajamal, we all have them. What are the isms that impact the way that you think and the way that you feel? We all have them. And when we find ourselves in these situations, are we being guided by those isms? Are we being impacted? What are our traumas? We all have them. We all pushed our way into this world, and I have yet to see a birth process where there wasn't some kicking and pushing going on. We all have trauma. Do we understand what our traumas are? Do we understand when we're being triggered? And do we understand how we respond when those triggers happen to us? So again, yes, long answer is, can we work with the law enforcement? Can we have an impact on our community in the training that we're providing? Yes, but we have to be willing to access the training as it's being provided. And sometimes we're not really interested in in taking on that challenge.
Judith, you were at that 360 meeting where the community members grilled Sheriff Aaron Hansen
I
and got
was.
media attention. What came from such effort from your vantage point?
Well, the one thing that it taught me, it reinforced in my mind the benefits of healing-centered engagement. As I sat through the meeting, I was shocked at the at how it impacted me. I did not realize that in the process I would be triggered by experiences that I've had throughout my childhood. You see, I was raised in a home by people who were born in 1908 and 1912. Their grandparents were slaves. So as you can imagine, it was sit down. We never heard yelling in our houses, in our home. We never heard voices elevated. And the only time you heard a voice elevated in our house is when one of them kids had done something. Jamal, and they was getting taxed by my mother. And we would be sitting in the corner, we'd be sitting there just shaking. Oh Lord, we feeling so bad for him, and we so glad it wasn't us. I did not realize how that elevated voice would affect me. So was I impacted by the tone of the way things went? Yes. But what I did, because I understand healing centered engagement, I had to do some heart work. Judith Hill, you are not getting ready to ignore everything that these young men came in here and said because you were triggered. You need to settle down, recognize that you were triggered, move beyond that, and do some real work. Go look up and find out what it is that they're talking about. Who are these individuals? Where is their heart? What is their intentions? What were they trying to say? And Jamal, I'll tell you, I spent about a week and a half just researching, listening, educating myself, moving beyond my isms and all of those biases that I had. And what I found, Jamal, is that the information, though there were those that were certainly impacted and affected and felt that it could have been delivered in a different way, the information and the intent behind the information was accurate. And as we've sat back from then till now and seen, it has opened eyes. It has brought about changes. It has helped to create new avenues of conversation and discussion that probably had that meeting not occurred, those things that we've seen happen since probably would not have happened. And so again, what I learned is I have to do some self-evaluation, my lens to mirror work. I had to look at my agency. I had to recognize, Judith, what was it that was affecting you? And why did you feel bothered by this? And are you going to allow those negative feelings or those troubling feelings to get in the way of you doing what you know you need to do, which is to self-examine? Because Ajamal, I shared with you with this earlier. There was a lot of things that were being said that were true. The room was full of community leaders. That room was full of community leaders. And quite frankly, most of us didn't know what was even going on. We were serving a community and something had happened so traumatic that many of us were not even aware of. And so I had to do some self-examination and say, as a North Omaha leader, why aren't you more engaged? Why aren't you more aware? And what do you need to do as an organization to make certain that moving forward, you are on the front end and that you understand? And then what can you do to affect a change in the community, in the communication, and in the families that are being affected?
You know, as you mentioned that, I grew up in a home where my parents did not use profanity, and it used to traumatize me when I was go to work and people cuss all the time or say things.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
Senator Chambers was another person who talked about it, where, you guys want to use profanity, you got to exclude me out of this meeting. Malcolm
Hmm.
X said the same thing when he came to Omaha. So sometimes when people use bad words, especially in the workplace or in a social setting, that is where you got to be there. People need to clean up because, again, when some people start cussing, it makes people feel like there's going to be a fight and so on. And so we need to be careful of that. I want to switch up and ask you something about healthcare. And I know you've worked for many years in the healthcare industry, and there are many premature deaths that are caused by historical trauma in our community. Is healing trauma? Is this healing can be trauma related? Can we use healing as a way to deal with this in terms of healthcare? Because I've heard people talk about healthcare, trauma, and healing. So how do we bring that together or address it?
One of the things that we talk about, and one of the aspects that we look at in training, is we talk about social toxins. We talk about our community and and people being raised in a community of where there's social toxins, poverty, healthcare disparities. You know the list. It goes on and on and on. And how do those disparities impact our lives? One of the aspects that we talk about is the fake. Well, we talk about these rain clouds. It just, toxins. They're like rain clouds in our lives and in our community. And it is suggested that many of the health disparities that we talk about that impact communities of color, that in many respects, they are really related to the environments that we're being raised in, the
Mhm.
stress that we're under, the extra the extra 3 or 7 or 8 or 10 or 20 miles that we have to go just to get to where most people walk across the street in order to be able to get to. When you're raised in a community where you don't walk on the sidewalk, you have to walk in the street because the sidewalks are not usable. When you live in a community that is run down, that you can drive in other communities. I was driving in my community and other communities, and they had people in trucks just cutting down trees.
Wow.
I mean, they was trimming them up and keeping them looking nice. And I thought to myself, we spend all day calling and crying just to get you to get the trees that fell because of a storm. I
Right.
don't know what it is to have people to come out and care that much about the neighborhood that I live in,
Right.
that care about the way that my children walk and what goes on in the parks. I drive throughout this city and I see beautiful parks, and yet I drive by the park that's around the corner from my house, and sometimes I won't let my grandchildren play because you're not going to step over in the grass because they must have forgot to come and cut our park. They
Wow.
must have forgot to come and cut the grass in our park. Now there have been some changes being made, but when you fight those impacts of poverty your entire life, much of what we blame diabetes and other health risks, a lot of it is really being impacted by the stress, the trauma that impacts our lives every single day. And we need to be able to recognize that the trauma that a Black man, no matter what, no matter where he is on the economic scale, listen, I don't know what it is to be a Black man. I don't. And I think that we need to recognize the trauma that Black men go through just to be able to ride down the street. And when you see the police car drive by, to not be impacted by that. There are many people in this community that don't sit down with their children and say, this is what you do if you get stopped. My son and my granddaughters lived out in West Omaha. For years, I drove out there. Ajamal, I couldn't find a police car.
Right.
And they be riding up on the back of you, tooting and doing all kind of illegal stuff. And I never understood why you couldn't. I didn't understand it. So again, we are under so many stressors, and they have an impact on the way that we are, how long we live, our health outcomes. And so I think that it's something that we just need to begin to take a look at: stress and living in this toxic environment that we live in.
You mentioned that I tell the story. I lived near 111th and Fort, and I had a neighbor years ago who drove around a whole year with a transit license tags, never got a ticket. And I remember one time my plates expired, and I didn't get paid till like the next day, so I was gonna go get it. And the police officer made a U-turn. I was near 30th and Grant Street, and I was going down to Burdett. Turned around and gave me a ticket. I had to pay it obviously because the plates were expired. But my point is, in certain parts of town, people say we're over policed, and I do know that many African Americans who grew up in Omaha have a fear of police officers. And I was at a
Right.
360 many years ago, and I made a comment that some of the officers in that room were nice. I've never been around nice
Hmm.
police officers who didn't harass
Hmm.
you, do dirty things. Now, we knew Tariq were African Americans and Midwest
Right.
Americans, but in terms of white officers, I didn't know any. And then one time we did a community forum where we had two beat officers come out, and they were develop a great rapport with the audience. But again, there was not many times that the police officers in my history of the city where they did forums where they were not by their shepherds or their guide dogs, where they're talking to people in our community. Again, I do know there are police officers who have built relationship, but systematically they don't have the kind of relationship they have in other cities with community police. And so again, some of us walk around with trauma because again, even though we wasn't shot individually, but when a black person is probably shot and it's not solved, and we have the history of that in the city or in the state, then you start to fear, am I the next one? We only got so much I'm going to open up, but I'm going to ask you two more questions. One is funding. Many programs are funded by external sources, such as government entities or grants, and they oftentimes do tend to be temporary programs. How do we get more financial support from our own community, particularly for programs to support North Omaha or our community?
You know, a lot of times, Jamal, having worked in non-profits, and I understand, and I understand the conversation around the number of nonprofits that are in this community. That we need to look at having more individuals who are business owners. That we begin to really focus on generational wealth. And I do not argue that concept. I know that it's true. What I would say, however, and I would challenge individuals as you begin to talk about nonprofit organizations. And a lot of times you say they come and go. Sometimes, yes, they come and go because there are what I call issues of the month, flavor of the month, where for 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years, I remember when AIDS was a big
Right,
conversation
right.
in our community. There were many programs around AIDS. And as that concern and that health concern began to wane and change, a lot of those programs, the funding that they had for those programs, it went away, and those programs go away. I believe that as a nonprofit, and this is now looking at North Omaha Collective. North Omaha Collective, how long are you going to be around here? Huh? What are you going to do to sustain yourself long term? Part of it is that we have to be willing to ever be vigilant in making certain, one, that we are responsive to the community. We have to be responsive to the community. What are you doing? What's going on in there? Open the door. What do you say that you're doing? Are you actually doing what you're telling us that you're doing? We need to also help our community understand. You have a responsibility to ask. I hear a lot of conversations. Them nonprofits, they don't do nothing. They ain't got no data. They don't do this. Do you know that you can go to a nonprofit board meeting? It is an open meeting. Do you know that you have a responsibility to call anybody that calls themselves the director of an organization and ask them, can you share with me your data? It's not private. It's not secret. It's not something that only the funder can get. And let me assure most people that if you're being funded in Omaha, Nebraska, oh, you're collecting some data. Because every funder that I've probably written a grant to every funder in this city, there's not one of them that does not ask you for data. They want to know what you're doing, how you're doing it, how many that you did, how long it took you, and what your outcomes are. So if we're giving it to the funder, it means it's available to the community. So community, before you say they ain't doing nothing, you first got to walk in the door and say, can you give me your last report? Can you give me the information that would help me better understand what exactly it is that you're doing in here? Let me look at the data and see what it says about the work that you are doing. We have to be able to get the community engaged and to understand the services that we are providing. And then again, we have to be responsive to the community. We have to understand that there's a mistrust in some ways for nonprofits. That they say we just sitting back there collecting checks and ain't doing nothing. Well, over 40 years, let me tell you, there's been some that was true. Collecting checks, you say that you do X, Y, and Z, you don't. You say you'll be here and you're not. You say that you will give us this and we don't see it. And the community has become distrusting. Nonprofits, we have to embrace that. And we have to make certain that we are going above and beyond to make sure that individuals know who you are, what you do, what you're being held accountable for, how you measure your success, how they can be involved, how they can be engaged, and what, if any, assistance that you can give to them. But more importantly, how can they come in and be involved in your program? Because any program that serves individuals and families in this community that does not have a place for the community to be able to serve and to be able to be heard and to be able to help determine the direction of the program, I would say that might be one that you should put on your list.
As you mentioned that, I will tell you that there are a number of organizations that need advice committees, they need
Yes.
focus groups, they need listening sessions, and more than anything, they need board members who are connected to the community. Again, a lot of organizations wrestle with the funding, so they tend to put high income people or people who have the means to donate. But again, you need to cycle board members off And also, you need a strategic plan because I know a number of organizations don't have that. I would like to see them publicize that and put that up there. But more than anything, I just think we got to have a better relationship with the community because, as one of the community leaders recently said, if you collect the money on behalf of the community, you have accountability, and you can't have
Right,
closed meetings, and you can't have secret agendas, and you got to make yourself public. And Nebraska does have open meeting laws for government. They also have where you can get records from government officials. So there should be no excuse for city officials or county officials or state officials to never travel to North or South Omaha if they're getting
right,
federal funds or using state funds that should
right.
touch the hands of those families and mothers so on. But the last question we switch over, what are some issues that North Omaha Collective is going to be working on in the future? What are you going to be looking on in the future in terms of your organization? We open it up to people who may want to ask you a question directly, Judith.
We're going to be looking at opportunities to be able to expand how we can provide healing-centered engagement training. I haven't been able to really do. I'm hoping the questions will allow me to share more about the contents of what the training actually involves. But I think that the biggest thing that my personal desire is, as the executive director of this organization, is that we do everything that we can to create opportunities for organizations, nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, businesses to understand the benefit of our coming together and working together.
Good.
Coming together and working together, understanding that everybody has something that they can bring to the table. Sometimes we stand up and we say, "You're of no value if you don't march this way. You're
Good.
of no value if you don't speak this way. You're of no value if you can't give this." Well, let me be honest with you and tell you that I can tell you that Judith Hill personally, I may not be on the street swinging bats and leading out in the march call. But there's a lot of things that North Omaha Collective can bring to the table. Now, the question is, will you value it? The reality is that one of the greatest resources we have in this community that we have stepped all over, we have embraced the Western culture that says if you're over 50, you ain't worth a dime. Go get your Social Security, sit down and shut up. Who do you think keeps an eye on this community? Who do you think is at the backbone of this community? We come out with brand new ideas, brand new programs. Do you realize 30 years ago we tried that? Do you realize that if you just let me talk to you, I can give you some insight and some information? We have overlooked one of the most significant contributors to our community. We have to recognize that there is no one leader. There's no one mayor of the Hispanic community, of the Latino community. There isn't a governor of the Black community. We are all collectively responsible for what happens in our community. And we have to learn how to look and be able to say, you know what? I'll go out on the front line in March. But now here's something I need from you. I think, Jamal, I shared with you this, and then I'll be quiet. If you need to raise $1,000 on tonight, $1,000, and somebody calls and say, "I'll give you 500." Well, you giving it from your organization. Stop playing with me. "I'll give you 250." Well, you got a little bit more to give 250. You don't miss it. And then somebody comes along and says, "I'll give you 25." Sometimes as a community, what we say is that $25 ain't worth a dime. Go somewhere and have a seat and sit down. Excuse me, my light bill is 75, and I'm going to cut my light bill short to give you the 25. Who are we to suggest what is of value and what isn't? Each one of us has a part to play in this journey towards healing, in this journey towards the community being recognized and to end the violence that goes on in our community, to improve and to change the way that law enforcement deals with all aspects of our community. It's going to take all of us to get that work done. And the biggest thing that I say that bothers me is that we pick and choose who's of value. I love the young men that have stepped up and that have used their voices to say enough is enough. I stand behind them, but I stand with them. But I will say to them and to anybody else, that's a part of the puzzle. But there's many other pieces that you may not be able to address. How do you get this community at large organizations, churches, sometimes you got to tell people what to do, huh? Everybody doesn't know what to do. Sometimes you got to have a plan that says, this is what we need. What can you do to assist us? Now, if you come to North Omaha Collective and say, what can you do to assist us? And we don't do nothing, then you have every right to stand up and say, I got a problem with that organization. But you can't put me out, you can't put us out to dry if you never allowed us to be a part of the solution.
Right. We've passed our time. I'm going to open it up. Anybody want to have any comments or direct questions, Judith, they can. I have three or four others just jumped as you were talking. Any other feedback? One thing I was going to allude to is that we've been doing a program with the Great Plains Black Museum, and we're trying to bring people in on a Saturday once a month to talk about the history. And one of the things I think that Moore is going to sponsor in the fall, I think October the 4th, is how do you bring the elders and young people in the same room to talk about the history of activists and people, and all the way back to way back in the day, even before some of our time, who were involved in the struggle, because we don't do a good job of teaching or educating the local people who've been doing stuff for years, because it's not always reported in the newspaper. But the program we're doing with the Great Plains Black Museum is a great program. We got different topics, and we're trying to let people speak directly to people. The meeting's only for like an hour and a half, but it gives people a chance to meet people directly who have expertise in those various topics, whether it be Juneteenth, dealing with Native Omaha Day, legal issues, you name it. But hopefully we can continue with that in the future. But it's a great opportunity. I think it was modeled some of that after what they do in Tulsa. So hopefully we can get more people involved in community education, because I know right now we can't expect academic institution to promote race and diversity when they're under fire and they're afraid of the Trumpites. Oh, quick question. Have you been invited to UNO, Creighton, College of St. Mary's, Methodist College after the day? In other words, do you ever get a chance to talk to folks like you do back when I was hanging out in those places? Do they invite you to do?
I have not had that opportunity as of yet to speak in the capacity that I'm currently working in. And so, by all means, anybody listening, we'd love to be able to come and have those conversations. And we understand that we have to be able to, right now, we're busy doing the work to get ourselves out there. We've done some work with the University of Nebraska Medical Center. We just finished doing a training with 16 of their leaders this past Wednesday.
Wow.
We also did some training with UNL with some of their leadership. They had a retreat, and so we were able to go out, and we were able to just provide the information there. As I say, what the essence of healing centered engagement are things that you've heard your entire life, but that over the time that we've become professionals and we've moved into these leadership roles, we haven't embraced them. We don't recognize how significant that they are in the work that we're currently doing.
No, there's an issue that you alluded to earlier, and I want to go back to it because I think it's very critical, and I'm very critical of organizations who want to throw out a $50 gift card to everybody who comes to a meeting. I think
Hmm.
sometimes there are many people in our community who do it for free. And you and I
Hmm.
go back in the day, those Christmas program days of Catholic Charities, we had low-income families turn around, they got their ship came and they turn around and sponsor another family. And I've had a lot of families say, I want to just give back, and I don't want to feel like I'm getting something, where I can't help other people. So sometimes people will do things because they believe in the cause. And again, you
Hmm.
gotta be careful when you think everybody in our community is going to come to an event only because you offer them kibbles and bits, or you offer them a gift card to Walmart. And I tell the story that one time I did some consulting work, like I mentioned, Chapin Hall, University out of Chicago, and they wanted to offer me gift cards. I said, no, let's forget it. I'm not taking gift cards if you got me doing consulting work. You don't pay other white consultants by gift cards. So the issue got to be careful is there's some people who want to do it because they want to help other people. They may want to do whatever they want to do. But like I say, I found it powerful when low-income families can give, even though they have money, they can give their time and talents. And the same thing with board members. Some of them don't have a lot of money to give, but they can spend time on the board working on projects and staff. I learned that at Charles Drew. I've learned that on a number of boards that I've served on over the years. And so those are valuable contributions. And as there's one South African said to me, sometimes your work and action in our struggle is more valuable than your money. So I just think
Right,
we got to
right,
change that paradigm.
right.
Again, I don't want to minimize somebody who's poor and they need childcare, transportation to get there. But again, there are a lot of us, we should try to go places we need to. Uh, again, when it's in our suit, we throw a concert here, we all show up for that. So I hear what you're saying. Any comments from the audience? Anybody want to share anything or ask Judith a question? Well, we got about 15 minutes. We talked now a little bit longer. By the way, I didn't ask you how big is your staff?
Jamal, we have a team of three dedicated individuals that have the responsibility of moving this process forward. Myself, Manel Fisme, he is responsible for setting up all of our trainings, and then Jaquita Shields, she's responsible for our outreach and just the maintenance and the things that we do within the organization. Listen, we're too small to get caught up in titles. We're all responsible for doing all aspects of this work in order to be able to get to the community how important it is for them to engage in this healing centered engagement training. And the reality is, there's not much I'm going to say, that it's just something you have to experience. You have to, when it has changed my life, it actually has, because I have embraced the concepts that healing centered engagement teaches. One of the things that you talk about, when you were talking about families, the way that we engage families oftentimes are a reflection of our bias towards the families that we're serving. Y'all poor, y'all need a free meal. No, I don't. I would have come to your meeting no matter what. How dare you assume that the only reason why I would show up is if you give me some food? You can't even cook. I don't want that. But again, those are our isms, those are our biases, and they have an impact on how we deliver services and how we deliver care and how we interact with people in our community. You know, when somebody comes in, an immigrant, and they may not necessarily, English may not be their first language, the first thing we do is start talking loud, asking the question again loud. They're not hard of hearing. They heard you the first time. We have biases, we have isms every single day that we deal with, and they impact how we engage with each other. Even people of color, we have our isms on how they deal. I had to literally say to somebody, to my entire Facebook family, if you're talking about Black men disrespectfully, I'm erasing you.
Wow.
Because for me to allow you to do that is for me to tell you that it's okay.
Right.
If you're on here disrespecting Black women, I'm going to have to let you go. Why? Because the reality is, the things that we're doing and saying are setting the stage for how we value ourselves,
Right.
how we look at ourselves. And in some instances, it just appears to me that sometimes some of those approaches that were used against us, even in slavery, that we have adopted those principles and those attitudes, and we've brought them into our community, and we don't even realize that we actually utilize them.
You know, as you mentioned that, one of the things I like to share when I worked 25 years in the food pantry in South and North Omaha is there was a way that I could talk to families, and again, even as a man, when I shared it with them. I grew up poor. I was poor all my life. Even when I went to the Peace Corps, I was poor. Came back, I got government assistance, lived in subsidized housing. So people didn't have nothing to own me. And so, you know, again, the issue of being from that community of low-income families, there was a way I had to report. I didn't preach down to folks, and I knew how to get taken to the woodshed if I disrespect Miss Jefferson or Mrs. Rodriguez or Mr. Lopez or whoever. Because again, when you're from the community and you know how people will behave in the culture, you don't assume that arrogant mentality that many of these so-called social workers or professionals achieve. Again, my criticism of School of Social Work and some of them, they don't have footprints in our community, and they don't have balanced Black men. At one point, they let me teach at a family-owned called African American Family, UNO. Then they canceled the class because they didn't want to deal with African American families as an issue. But my point back to you is that we got to do a much better job of connecting with our community, and you can't connect the community if you won't travel to North or South Omaha. And for some of us who never travel other places, how can we say we in community engagement? Just because you put a sign on your chest and name tag says community engagement expert, if you've never been out of your office like some of the people who work in city hall or county government, I know that. Because again, just look at their mileage sheets. So it's very important. But one of the things I want to share with you real quick, Judith, that I found fascinating is that when I was at Catholic Church, I speak of that finally sometimes because of the many years I was there. Our executive director had like a community event, like a little, not a fair, but just open house where he provided food so people get to know us. It was not a bragging rights, but he said to us at one point, his name was Scott Adams at the time, he said, at least once a year, let's do something where we can invite everybody here from the communities to benefit from our services and get to socialize among themselves. Let's get out of their way. And so I don't think a lot of agencies do that event in the community with some of the clientele or people they serve or whatever. But we got to move back to those days because we become disjointed with this Facebook, social media. And again, sometimes we don't do the kind of stuff that you and I did back in the day when we were doing the struggle. And again, that's one of the issues. But one question I was going to ask you, If you
Mhm.
had to name the most profound impact on your life in terms of your work and in your personal, who would that be? Because we always talk about who is those giants or people that influence you as a person. Can you throw some names out, or can you give a description of what they would like to help you evolve as a person you are today?
I hopefully, the listeners won't be disappointed because they won't know who this is. The
Okay.
two individuals that most impacted my life was named Sidney Burnett and Nettie Burnett.
Oh, wow.
They were my foster parents
Wow.
that chose to take me along with seven other children into their lives when they were in their late 50s and 60s. They came from Brownsville and Jacksonville, Tennessee. My father worked on the railroad. I thought he was a hero. When he would dress up and he would put on that white jacket and that hat, he was a porter
Oh, yeah.
for the
Reporters in
Union Pacific
Nebraska.
Railroad.
Right.
But in our mind, he was a hero.
Right.
What man leaves and stays gone 3 and 4 days and travels across the country? It wasn't until I saw the movie, what is it, the Thousand Georges or something, that I realized the indignities that my dad actually suffered as
Wow.
he did the work. But he was a man of such eloquence in terms of his speaking. He had an eighth grade education, yet he served under 11 pastors as an associate pastor.
Oh,
He
wow.
could preach, he would stand, he was a leader. He never taught me that I want you to do this as a woman. He always told me, he never said women are in the kitchen, women do this. He said, always give the very best that you have. He and his wife, they raised seven children. They took seven children with six mothers and seven different fathers, and they made us a family. They said that you can do it, to always do your best. If you're going to do it, give your best. If you're not going to give your best, have a seat and sit down and be quiet. And have a seat and sit down and be quiet. Do your best. Give your best. Recognize that you're there to serve when you're working with others. Make sure that you don't forget the platform that you're standing on. Because Ajamal, a lot of us, we create platforms in these organizations, but they're for us to basically pat ourselves on the
That's
back,
true.
to build up our reputation, to build up our legacy of what a wonderful person I am. The reality is that any platform that you and I or any other community leader are allowed to stand on, if our focus isn't the people that we're there to serve, we are being self-serving. As my daddy said, have a seat and sit down.
You know,
Have a seat, sit down.
as you mentioned that, one of the things come to mind, again, there are a number of people who passed on to the spirit world outside my parents. But one thing that just hit me as you were talking, when I was at St. Martin's in Juan Diego, we probably had more community forums than any organization in the city. We brought low-income families into with professionals. And I wish we'd do more of that because, again, I can see the art of facilitating meeting is lost by folks. I was in a recent meeting where the participants were talking. We didn't give them enough time because the presenter talked a little bit longer than normal. And one of the things we got to do is give people a time to engage, socialize. And if we ain't seen each other for a while, meaning sometimes we're going to do that before the meeting or after, but we got to build that into the meeting. And sometime we got to, again, start on time, end on time. But I just wish more organizations would have open community forums, information settings. And again, I may not know how to build a deck, but that could be an informal education in our community. There are all kinds of things we learn from each other. And if I don't live in a certain area, then I won't learn about the benefits from that certain utility company, whatever, if my neighbor doesn't tell me. So we got to do a much better job of bringing community people in and engaging them in education. And they also can help teach us. Because again,
But if I could suggest, though, and I agree with you, that comes us to one of our strategies called agency.
okay,
And that is encouraging people to feel that they can act and speak and make decisions in their own best interest. In order for you to be able to do that, you have to be able to take the time to study culture, to figure out who you're in the room with. Everybody does not feel comfortable in every situation
right,
speaking freely as maybe you and I do.
that's
So
true.
when we're in these rooms and because there are and honestly, there are a lot of organizations that are bringing community people in and that are giving them opportunity to engage with the organization. Are we in Are we utilizing that unique skill of recognizing? Have you ever been in a meeting and you see somebody who just sits and doesn't say a word?
Right, many
But
times.
you can see in their eyes that their brain is working and
Right,
that they're thinking. We have to learn how to be able to invite that person into the
right,
conversation.
that's true.
We have to recognize that everybody doesn't have the same agency, that trauma gets in the way, that there's many reasons why I may not necessarily feel comfortable speaking up or getting involved or saying what it is that I need to say. As leaders, we have to understand that as a concept. And when we're working with people, we need to take the time to figure out who we're working with. We need to actually do our homework to understand who are the people that we've invited into our midst. Do we understand their culture? Do we give them the opportunity to tell us who they are? Do we care? Or are we more concerned about collecting the data, standing on the platform, and then being able to get on social media and tell everybody what we've done?
That's true. And then also the thing I noticed is some people go and put pictures on social media as if that's the essence of the meeting or the whatever. So we can all do a photo op, but my point is, what are the outcomes? Oh, the other thing we got to do is evaluations. Again, whenever you do
Yes.
evaluation, that's how you improve because I learned that in table talk, we improved over the years by listening to the participants and they give us feedback that help us improve the next series that we worked on. So again, you have to be able to ask the participants, what do you think? Unlike somebody once said, because I paid for this conference, I don't need anybody's feedback about how good it was. Well, no, you're not going to make it a good conference the next time if you don't fill out where the weakness or the strengths are, and also to be able to synthesize that and make it go forward. We've got about a few minutes left, but Judith, I want to ask you a question that's kind of a little unusual and so on. You
Uh-huh.
focus on North Omaha and African Americans. Are other racial groups, can your model be adopted to other racial groups? Can they participate in your program? Because I know that we talked about that as a title and some things we're doing more, but how does it work with other groups and is it similar?
We provide training to anybody that is interested in getting the training. When we first started, it's a long story, but people go North Omaha Collective. Oh, it's just for North Omaha. The example that I say is I told you, I came back and said, we're the only organization in the United States of America that is focusing on healing centered engagement full time and that is providing that training. There are hospitals, if you do the research, there are people all over the country talking about it, but we are the only one that is providing the training full time. Now, when you say North Omaha Collective, in my mind, what it says is kudos to North Omaha because so often trainings like this, we look to the greater community to get these concepts. Somebody else from outside of our community has to bring it in. I am proud to be able to say that this is a training that probably 50% of the people that we have trained are not people of color.
Oh, wow.
It impacts everybody. On when we do our satisfaction survey on a scale, a 5 point scale, we're averaging 4.69
Wow. Very good.
across the board when we do our evaluations and come back and take a look at it. North Omaha Collective says, oh, there's some mighty powerful things that are coming out of North Omaha. And one of them are North Omaha Collective. So I thought about changing the name. Maybe we shouldn't say North. Maybe it'll turn people off. Listen, it's a new day and a new age. There are marvelous things happening in this community. We say in healing centered engagement, we don't focus on what's wrong with you. I'm so tired of us externally and internally focusing on what's wrong with North Omaha. We don't believe in asking that question. Our question is, what's right with North Omaha? What's right with South Omaha? What's right with people of color? And then we say, let's build on that. We're not going to tear it down. Our training isn't about telling you how good you'll be if you just do it our way. Our training starts with the fact that you're here says that you're somebody. We train women. We have women's groups. We have men's group. We're starting to now do youth training groups. And I've listed all the other organizations. We sit down together with 6 or 8 women, 6 or 8 men for 4 weeks, and we have one-on-one conversations about how you can take this training and utilize it in every aspect of your life.
Judith, on that note, I want to just say thank you very much. And again, it's been a pleasure to have you on there. This is the first time we've had a chance to interview you as Executive Director of North Omaha Collective. Hope we can have you come back again and engage with more folks in our community and do some other things with us. So it's always a pleasure to do that. I want to make a
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I want to make a couple of announcements. We're going to have a couple of programs coming up in the future. My partner in crime, Karen Abram, and I are going to do a show talking about issues that people don't often talk about dealing with racism. So we got that planned for the next sometime in the next few weeks. We're also going to have Mindy Chipman, who is the director of ACLU, talk about some things with that. And then we're also going to have Maya Crawford Gray talk about some of the educational issues. So we got different groups of people we're going to invite to give a chance to have a platform. And Judith and I can atone to this or talk about this, but we don't have a lot of community opportunities to tell about the goodness of our program, what we do, because mainstream media does not always give us the time or the space to elaborate as we do in a program like what we're doing here. So I really appreciate Judith Hill coming on, sharing this and going forward. And hopefully we'll get a chance, Judith, to do this again in the future. But keep us informed as you go forward,
Yes.
and we really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Ajamal. Continue to do what you do. You are one of the individuals that make this organization, I mean, that make this community so much better. And I am honored to call you a colleague, a mentor, and a friend.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And on that note, folks, we hope you have a good rest of the week, as we say, and may the force be with you. Baroko.